Okay, so hi everyone, I'm back, and today I want to talk about something that has to do with being an outsider and not fitting in, and the experience of fundamental rejection and how to heal that and move forward in your life. I'm a little bit all over the place today, but I'm going to try to make everything really succinct. I just got back from playing a show in San Francisco like 2 weeks ago, and I wrote a blog post about it. You can read it on my Substack. It's called A Song for San Francisco. But anyway, when I got back, I saw clips of this new interview with Madonna on this podcast with this guy. He's called Jay Shetty. And I mean, he seems to be pretty popular, but I have no idea who he is or any context around his podcast. But I love Madonna. I love her music. And I think she's just such a fascinating public figure. Like, she's definitely someone who is one of a kind and has lived a very one of a kind life. I actually own her infamous sex book, which I won in a very tense eBay auction like 6 years ago. And it's really great and provocative, beautifully made. And I still revisit it to this day because it's held up a lot. But anyway, in this new interview, she talked about being an outsider, which I thought was fascinating because I think that fame and celebrity is a kind of outsideness that isn't really thought of as being an outsideness because it's so coveted in our culture. Everybody wants to be famous, but no one stops to think about how that can be a very ostracizing and often irreversible experience. I mean, like, look at Michael Jackson, who I think is arguably the most famous person in the world. It made him a complete and total outsider. There's not a single person on earth who is ever going to be able to relate to his experience, except for maybe like Jesus Christ. Anyway, I was watching the Madonna interview and I thought that what she had to say was really profound, and I just want to play a little clip of it right here.
I think I've always felt like an outsider in life, felt like an outsider growing up in Michigan. I felt like an outsider when I came to New York. I felt like an outsider when I moved to LA and had my Hollywood life. You know, I always felt like I did when I was in high school. I don't fit in. And not fitting in is what saves you. And curiosity and being an outsider, and those are the things that actually save you, even though it's not supported in our society. Like, to think outside the box, to take the road less traveled by, to not be so concerned with approval, public approval.
Okay, I'm gonna stop it there. Queen, yeah. So anyway, this is what kicked off this whole thought process for me. Just like listening to her talk about her life and about her experiences and about her spiritual life. And I really resonated with a lot of what she was saying, you know, because I feel like I too have felt like an outsider my entire life. And I think that when you don't fit in, or when you don't experience a sense of belonging, especially in your formative years, it really marks you in a very specific way. And it can actually be a kind of trauma. And as all traumas, it can produce a neurosis, like a very serious neurosis, actually, and one that you might not even be consciously aware of. It's like, you don't want to get trapped in your mind, you know? You don't want to live your life with a chip on your shoulder or have all of this internal tension going on. I really do think that that's the reason that a lot of people behave badly, especially online. Because online is, like, the internet is the land of outsiders, right? Like, think of incels and, you know, people who are really into the woke mob or any of these, like, theater kid-ass political extremists on either side. You know, they all have a chip on their shoulder from like elementary school, and they're suffering inside, and they've chosen to externalize the suffering so that it becomes everyone else's problem. And when you zoom out and you look at it, it's actually quite an unnecessary suffering to have to carry that throughout your life. Like, it doesn't have to be that way. You know, who are you without your pain? I often ask myself this question, and I honestly wish that everyone did too, because I think it would do everyone some good. And this is also why, and like side note, but this is also why I don't really talk about my upbringing or the first part of my life in interviews or in the publicity for my work in music or film or whatever. And partially it's because it's very complicated to talk about, but also, I had an extremely traumatic childhood, very traumatic teenage and early adult years. Like, the first part of my life was uniquely awful, but I've never wanted that to define me as a person in the world. I've always thought to myself, like, yeah, sure, like my pain can inform my work, because of course it will, it's my life, but I also want to exist outside of that trauma. And I want to know, who am I outside of that specific suffering? Like, who am I without my pain? And when I look at it in the big picture, it's like, yeah, okay, everybody suffers. We know this. And yes, it's not fair if you were excluded or ostracized in your life. But the thing is too, that like, once you become an adult, once you become responsible for your life, it's your responsibility to heal. Or as Rudolf Steiner would say, it's your responsibility to strive for spiritual knowledge and spiritual perfection so that you can be a servant of the world and of humanity. And I really like this idea that healing is for you, yes, but it's also for the world. Healing as an act of service, because to me a large part of the point is to give back. The point is to serve humanity, to serve others. When you heal, when you actualize your potential, when you become yourself, when you become a star, you are serving humanity. And I just think that's really beautiful. Like, that speaks to me a lot. I think often that people who've had this experience of outsiderness have a lot to offer the world. Like, this otherness, this strangeness, this difference that you have is a gift. It's very special. And I just want us all to be able to nurture this gift and to also share it with the world. So first things first, I feel like I need to talk about something that all outsiders experience, and it is something called fundamental rejection. So when you don't fit into the context in which you were born, you experience a fundamental rejection. This rejection is felt on a soul level. It can happen either from your family, from school, at work, from the culture you're born into, the race you're born into, the country, customs, traditions, really, like, it's whatever, like any and all social groups. And this rejection can be active or passive, meaning you can either be overtly bullied or attacked, but you can also be excluded and silently ostracized. It can just look like so many different things, but the core message is, you do not belong. You do not fit in. You are not one of us. And rejection is an ancient fear that all humans have. Fear of rejection is not conscious. It's wired into our very DNA because we need each other to survive on a biological level. Humans are social creatures. We have an intrinsic need to be and to live together with others. We need to feel belonging in order to survive. So when a person is deprived of that sense of belonging, it wounds the physical body, the brain, the heart. Like, it's scientifically proven that certain experiences of rejection can cause brain damage, which is crazy. So it wounds the physical body and, the mental, but it also wounds the soul. And when the soul is wounded, it gets twisted and turned into all types of horrific shapes. Rejection starves the soul, You're not getting soul food that you need, which is connection and belonging with others. And when you do not get to belong, you also experience a deprivation of socialization. And this means that it ends up being really hard to relate to other people because you simply haven't had the practice. And that can become a self-fulfilling, self-reinforcing loop of behavior. It goes from like, I don't fit in, so I don't know how to act. And I don't know how to act, so I don't fit in, and so on and so forth. And this is why some people develop a rejection sensitivity, which is a very difficult way to live, I should know. And this fundamental rejection can also spiral inwards to where you begin to reject yourself. And rejecting yourself leads to self-hatred. And hating yourself is, again, a very difficult way to live. Hating yourself is like hating life. And we can't hate life. We have to choose life. We have to tune into hope frequencies in order to survive for the future of humanity and the future of ourselves. And so we have to learn how to heal from this experience of fundamental rejection. And to do that, I think that we start with Carl Jung. I've really been on my Jung tip lately. But Jung had this idea around individuation, which is to say the transformational life process of becoming oneself. And he has this quote where he says, individuation means becoming an individual, and insofar as individuality embraces our innermost, last, and incomparable uniqueness, it also implies becoming one's own self. And that's from his book, The Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious. But also, like, don't quote me on that, because I tried to find the PDF of this book to verify the quote, because you can't really trust Google these days, but I couldn't verify it. So, you know, just fingers crossed that this is like a real thing he said. I mean, it sounds like him, and whatever. It works for our purposes today. But anyway, if we start with Jung and with this idea that your life is supposed to be about embracing your uniqueness, your difference, and becoming yourself, then the first step to healing a fundamental sense of rejection is to actually move towards your outsideness. What is it that makes you different? You know, why are you being shunned or excluded? What's your deal? What's your problem? What's so wrong with you? And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I just mean it in the sense of, like, you actually have to look at yourself and identify what your gift is, what your outsideness is. See it clearly, name it, write it down, say it out loud. And I'll use myself as an example. You know, I always felt that I was different from those around me. I always felt like an outsider. You know, I felt like an outsider in my own family, in my own home, among my peers at school, at work, in Montreal, in Vancouver, in Toronto, like, you know, just among the general world population. And for the longest time, I wouldn't look directly at my difference. Others would respond to me in a way that told me that they thought that I was weird and strange. And I experienced this fundamental rejection, but for the longest time, I just wouldn't look at it directly. Like, I couldn't identify exactly what it was. Like, I just didn't understand why I was being rejected. And it all felt very ambient to me. And that was because I was scared to look at it directly, honestly. Like, I think looking back, I felt like if I looked at it directly, if I moved towards it, it would make it real. And if it was real, that something about me was different from other people, then it would make me bad. Like, I would be wrong somehow. And so I rejected and suppressed and hid and ignored myself, ignored my difference, ignored my gift. And as a result, I was in a lot of pain for a very long time. And I keep going back to that Jung quote that I mentioned last episode, where he says there is no coming to consciousness without pain, because he's absolutely right. You know, looking directly at your outsideness, moving towards yourself is very painful. And I really don't like how much like new age stuff tries to soft wash it and tell people like, just love and accept yourself, easy peasy, love and light, namaste, babe. It's like, no, bitch. Moving towards yourself, seeing yourself, coming to consciousness is extremely, extremely painful. And especially when you do it for the first time, like, oh my God. When I moved towards myself for the first time, when I looked directly into the light and identified what it was about me that was so different, when I saw myself clearly, I literally felt like I was dying. You know, it ripped me apart on a soul level. The core of who I had thought I was up until that moment, it was completely destroyed. And it was so painful. But baby, let me tell you, it was motherfucking worth it. It was worth it. It was worth it. And every time since then, when I've peeled back another layer and another layer and another layer, it's always been worth it, you know? The pain of coming to consciousness is 1,000,000,000,000,000 times better than the suffering of avoiding yourself, of avoiding life. And I will continue to choose the light again and again and again, forever and ever. Amen, motherfucker. Okay, so in order to heal, you begin with moving towards yourself and understanding and embracing your uniqueness. choosing to see yourself clearly. And then after this, I think that the next thing you need to do is to develop self-esteem, and that means affirming your uniqueness. I will always stand by my thought that the number one problem that affects the way that we relate in this world today is the lack of self-esteem that the majority of people have. Most people have terrible self-esteem. And a large part of this is because of our culture and the fact that we do not view children as human beings that are on the continuum of what eventually becomes an adult. And so we don't teach children how to develop proper self-esteem. And these children turn into adults with low self-esteem who start wreaking havoc everywhere, as we can see. And it's just insanity, But that's another conversation. For this conversation, however, I go back to my point that in order to heal from fundamental rejection, you need to develop self-esteem, and you need to do that by affirming your outsideness. So that means building upon it, creating from it, going deeper into it. Once you've identified what makes you different, now you need to build the lore around yourself. It is constructive material, and you need to do something with it, something positive and productive, just whatever that may look like for you. And creating from your difference is also a protective mechanism. It's almost like by affirming that which keeps you on the outside, you create a new center that you can be on the inside of. And like I said, your strangeness is a gift. It will transform you if you use it, and you have to use it. It makes me think of the parable of the talents from the Bible, which is a really good biblical fable that you can analyze through a psychological lens. So the story goes that a slave master, no, sorry, I'm kidding. A master gave some money, some talents to 3 of his servants before he went away on a trip. And when he came back, 2 of those servants had invested the money that he gave them. And, they presented the master with both the initial funds as well as the returns on their investments. But then the 3rd servant, he didn't do anything with the money. He actually just buried it in the ground. And when the master asked him, why the hell did you do that? He basically said that he was scared, but also resentful. He felt like the master didn't deserve to benefit from the talents that he had. And so, of course, the master, kicked him out and admonished him. He literally sent him into the hellish darkness where there was, and I quote, weeping and the gnashing of teeth. So, he sent him out into the streets, okay? Oh my God. Bible stories are always so dramatic, but it's just because the human psyche, human beings are dramatic, okay? But anyway, that story is a perfect lesson on why you should use your gifts, invest in your difference, affirm your outsideness. You cannot bury yourself in the ground. If you invest in yourself and affirm your uniqueness, it will pay for itself 1,000 times over. And just another side note, Jung actually analyzed this parable in his book, Answer to Job. And I actually know that for a fact. So if you want to read more about that, go look at that book. And lastly, I'll say that to heal fundamental rejection, after you understand yourself and then affirm your outsideness, you will need to develop a new way of being in the world. This part is basically all about taking what you've been cultivating inside and putting it on the outside, turning from inward to outward. And how do you do that? That's right, baby. You tune into hope frequencies. I told you guys that this is my new thing. This is my life now. Hope frequencies. But yeah, when you tune into hope frequencies, you'll be able to develop a new way of being in the world. Being an outsider, especially if you've been one all your life, it forces you to develop certain self-defense mechanisms and survival methods. And this can look like a lot of different things. We adapt to survive, right? But once you no longer have to just survive, those same mechanisms and tools are no longer right for the job that is living your life. An easy example I can think of is, say someone who has fear of abandonment as a result of being an outsider. And I actually think that Madonna said this in her Jay Shetty interview, that she has a fear of abandonment that she developed when she was young. She said that because of this, she developed a self-defense mechanism, which was to basically become hyper independent and almost like isolationist, where basically she was like, I take care of myself. No one can control me. No one can help me. I don't need anything from others. I don't need other people, and other people don't need me. And if we take her as an example, that self-defense mechanism will work until she's confronted with life situations that actually do cause her to need other people and for other people to need her. And she literally said that this happened to her when she became a mother, like when she had her first child. And it's like, on one hand, self-defense mechanisms are important because they give us a way to survive the unsurvivable, but we cannot cling to them forever. When the danger is gone, and the danger will always go, we have to let go. We have to turn towards the world and dare to be seen for who we are. And I'm reading this Marion Woodman book right now. It's called Addiction to Perfection, The Still Unravished Bridegroom. And it's really fucking good, by the way. Another side note, she is one of my favorite writers and depth psychologists. Like, she really changed my life so much with her work. Like, R.I.P. to the motherfucking GOAT. Canadian queen. Did you know that? Did you know she's Canadian? Anyway, in her book, she has this passage, which I'm actually going to read to you right now. I have it here in front of me. Okay, so she writes, the psyche that has lived all of its life in fear of not being nourished by the mother or of being sniffed out by the father, in other words, the psyche that experienced fundamental rejection, can cut the umbilical cord only when it stands on new ground. Fear of abandonment is no different at 25 years than it is at 25 days. Nothingness is always nothingness. The ego has to come to realize that it is only insofar as it sees itself as an extension of its old life that it is facing death. Once it realizes that the devouring pattern can be changed, it realizes its potential for freedom. This is the creative moment. If the ego decides in that moment to take possession of its own reality, then it can move out of the complex into a celebration of life. Christ puts it more succinctly, except a man be born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God. Wow. How good is that? And she is absolutely right. You know, we do almost have to be born again in order to move through and beyond fundamental rejection. And when I say born again, you know, it's a metaphor. It's a way of saying like dying to the old life, to the old you, and just allowing yourself to become new again and again and again. Of course, some of this will come about naturally as you understand and affirm your outsideness, but you still need to do like conscious work on this. And this can look like so many things, you know, learning how to set boundaries, forgiving yourself or forgiving others, releasing the desire to be accepted by everyone, cutting people off, letting people in, changing your mind. Like, it really can look like so many things, but the crux of it is to engage with the world around you. You know, the whole point is to participate in the world. Woodman says it as well. She says we have to take responsibility for our own lives. And sometimes that means actually letting go of the very identification with being an outsider. Like, yes, you are different, but you also belong in the world, you know? Everyone who exists in the world belongs in the world. The universe is not wasteful. It's not frivolous. You matter and you're here for a reason. That's some hope frequencies for you. And, you know, tuning into hope frequencies is also a way of taking responsibility for your life. It's a way to resist the slop that would otherwise make you bury your difference in the ground. Hope frequencies feed the soul and they transform us, they perfect us, not towards an image of absolute perfection, but towards a perfect wholeness. We are perfect and whole human beings. And yeah, I think that's about all I've got to say on this today. Just wanted to say that I've been getting a bit of feedback from you guys as far as the content, which is really nice. Thank you. I always want to hear what you think about what I've said. And I mean, if you have any suggestions for something you want me to talk about, feel free to drop a comment or DM me. But anyway, I'm gonna go and I think get a little bit of chocolate right now. Yeah. All right, that's it. I love you. Bye.